Have you ever wondered what C-suite executives actually do every day? What does your CEO, your CFO, or your COO, what do they actually do from day to day? We're going to talk about that here in a series of videos that I call Understanding the Executive Suite. Today, we're going to start off at a very high level where we're talking about generally what the responsibilities for C-suite executives are, what their mandates are, what their required duties every day are. And this generally works for small, medium, and large corporations. If you have a company that's, say, like maybe 30 to 50 employees up to 30 to 50,000 employees. Overall, the roles are about the same. And so learning what a C-suite executive does in any size corporation will help you take the next step in your career to hopefully get to that level yourself. So with that, let's dive into it. So right off the bat, talking about what C-suite executives do every day in and out, one thing they do not do is they don't manage the day-to-day operations of the organization. They delegate that to their VPs or directors. When you're a manager, you are managing a team of people or a bunch of resources that may be people or other resources. It could be vehicles or equipment or even bandwidth. But you're managing things. When you're a director or a vice president, your role is to direct the resources and the assets, including the managers, right? So each team that a manager manages is underneath the purview of a VP. The VP or the director, their job is to make sure that those managers are managing their resources effectively to the company's goals, right? But who sets the goals? That is done at the C-suite level. C-suite executives are typically responsible for a certain area of the company. So for example, CTO, Chief Technology Officer, well, it makes sense that they're responsible for all of the technology roadmap and technology development of the company. CFO, Chief Financial Officer, it makes sense that they're responsible for the finances of the company. And there's a lot more to it than that, but generally speaking, you can take an organization and break it down into a few parts, right? There's sales or revenue, there's operations or delivery, and then there's technology or product, and then there's other administrative areas as well. And so C-suite executives tend to oversee those categories of the company. Each C-suite executive is responsible for growing the business collaboratively with the rest of the C-suite. So a CEO, CTO, and CFO will all work together, for example, to grow the company in a certain direction based on something that they all see as a reason or a path for the company to grow. Executives at the C-suite level work very collaboratively with one another. It's very common for someone who's like a CMO to understand the finance of the organization, to understand the technology of the organization, to understand the supply chain of the organization. It's because at the C-suite, everyone has a functional discipline and they're responsible for their silo, but they work day to day collaboratively with each other across the entire organization to make sure that the entire organization is growing. And collaboratively, they'll make decisions that help the business grow. And that's what you want. You want the C-suite to be figuring out how to actually grow the organization. Because if you're not growing as a company or an organization, you're probably dying. The C-suite executives are also responsible for making sure that they redesign the corporation or the organization so that it meets new challenges and new opportunities that are coming forward. Executives at the C-suite tend to think 3 to 5 or even 7 years into the future on a regular basis. It's actually hard to pull C-suite executives back into the present because they're constantly thinking about where the puck is going so that the company can skate towards the puck. C-suite executives are future biased and they're thinking about what do they need to do to the organization in order to get it ready for where the puck will be in 5 to 7 years. That's why C-suite executives, when you present to them, they are looking for a future bias, not a present bias or a past bias in the content that you share with them. So most organizations have what I would call a trinity of C-suite executives at the core of the C-level team. Now, there can be, in some companies, 17 C-suite executives and others just one C-suite executive. But generally speaking, you have between 3 and 7 C-suite executives in most companies that are under like 10,000 employees. But I want to talk about the 3 core C-suite executives that are usually found inside of a company. So first and foremost, you will have a CEO, a Chief Executive Officer, whose job is basically to manage and oversee everything about the company. The CEO is the highest ranking executive, most cases, in a company, and they only report to either the owners or a board of directors who have been appointed by the owners. And so the CEO only speaks to that audience. His or her job is to make sure that the company is moving in the direction that the board or the owners want it to move. The other part of the Trinity is the CFO, or Chief Financial Officer. And this is a person whose responsibility, is pretty obvious. They make sure that the company never runs out of money. They make sure that the company is using the financial resources that it has to its best of its ability to be as profitable or growth oriented or whatever the metrics are that are defined by the ownership. If they want the company to grow uncontrolled and be unprofitable for a period of time, that happens too. But the finance officer is responsible for making sure that they define metrics and then the company or the organization hits those metrics. And then the third part of the Trinity, where you have the CEO and the CFO, there's one more C-suite executive that typically fills out this Trinity. And it's one of two types depending on the company you are. It's either going to be the COO, Chief Operations Officer, or the CTO, Chief Technology Officer. And it really depends on the kind of company that you have. So if you're a service delivery company that's doing something for people as a service, you go and you build decks on the back of people's houses, or if you are, delivering meals or whatever physical thing that you do, if it's a service, typically you're going to have a COO here as the third leg of the Trinity. But in technology companies, like software-driven companies, that might be a CTO or Chief Technology Officer. Either way, this chief officer, their responsibility is to deliver whatever the product or the service or the capability is. They're not too necessarily tied up in the sales side. That's typically where the CEO is mostly focused early in a company. But the COO or the CTO, one of the two of them, will make up the Trinity of the C-suite executives. So you have this core of C-suite executives, the CEO, CFO, and either the CTO or COO, depending on the type of company. But those three make up kind of the core C-suite team, but there are dozens more C-suite executive roles that are out there, and it depends on the type of company, the type of industry, the size of the company. All of that matters in terms of what other C-suite executives there are out there. So you want to check out this video here to learn more about the whole rainbow of C-suite executives that exist and all of the interesting roles that actually might be something that you've never heard of or never considered in your career as a path forward. So check out this video to learn more about the rainbow of C-suite executives that are out there.